Welcome. My name is Opubo Benebo. Given the object of elevating world hunger, the overview of farming for food as given in Episode 1 stated the fundamental need for a landmass on which the farming is practiced, and which landmass is called Subsistence Farm. The condition of the landmass, however, also implied a level of preparation as having been performed prior to the inception of the farming. Synopsizing, I present at this time for consideration the discovery of the landmass as a raw parcel of land on which to practice subsistence farming has been decided, and the first-tier preparation of the landmass for subsistence farming. A subsistence farm can be constructed or designed out of any vacant parcel of land. However, in this discussion, the parcel of land is defined to have certain geometric dimensions because the goal of the presentation and the preparation aims to evolve a kind of prototype large farm dynamics. In that regard, then, the basic landmass is presumed to be of dimensions of 9 feet by 7 feet or larger. These type of farms were pervasive in many parts of the world before the advent of agricultural technologies that enabled the plowing and tilling of large expanses of land that opened up to industrial farms or large farms. First-tier preparation of the landmass for the subsistence farming. A subsistence farm can be constructed or designed out of any vacant parcel of land. However, in this discussion, the parcel of land is defined to have certain geometric dimensions because the goal of preparation aims to evolve a kind of prototype land farm dynamics. In that regard, then, the basic landmass is presumed to be of the size 9 feet by 7 feet or larger. This type of farms were pervasive in many parts of the world before the advent of agricultural technologies that enabled the plowing and tilling of large expanses of land mass that opened up to industrial farms or large-scale farming. So let's get on with the specifications of the land mass that would be appropriate in the circumstances. Now, the specifications. 1. The land mass must be contiguous and boundable, meaning the land is not a collection of distinctly separate or disparate pieces of land adding up to the given dimension, but it's rather one piece of land that by superficial size is of the given dimension. For those mathematics inclined, the requirement can be said to be of the required dimensions when evaluated by calculus integration over the space. 2. Though acceptable as determined by integration to be of square footage of 63 square foot, being 9 feet by 7 feet, there is the preference of one directionally larger dimension that may be adopted as the length dimension. 3. The landmass is isolated from other structures and is effectively a standalone landmass because a non-standalone mass imposes the implementation of other requirements. Now then, the discovery of some land masses is fairly straightforward. Very often, families have small land masses of the specified dimensions or larger, and such will be admissible for the considerations. Such farms are common in the developing countries such as India, Mexico, African countries, some South American countries, and the Asian countries. In developed countries, there are many homes with premises vacant land masses. For instance, backyards of homes relegated to family picnics or cookouts are often of the specified dimensions and remarkably often qualify as standalone, being separated from the home space while still affording ambulatory moat space to the residential building. Residential homes garages also often meet the dimensional specifications of the type of land being considered. However, because these impose additional requirements on the preparation process, as will soon become obvious, these will be left out in this discovery process. There is, of course, always the option of addressing this issue for the benefit of supporter club members. Many residential homes also have vacant basements of the dimensions that are required or equal to or larger than the specifications. However, just like garages, because these impose additional requirements on the preparation process, as will soon become obvious, these would also be left out in this discovery process. Yet, it's left open the option of addressing the issue for the benefit of Supporters Club members. Finally, there are the structurally stable, unoccupied or abandoned buildings in cities and suburban communities. The rooms or spaces in these buildings are of the minimum specified dimensions, but they do not have ground as a floor, but rather concrete. Even so, however, the buildings or parcels thereof, for which the roof or upper ceilings can be torn off or removed, may be usable for subsistence farms with some effort. Now then, let's get on with the preparation of the landmass discovered for use for the subsistence farming. As stipulated in episode 1, there is the need for the ground to have a topsoil of at least 6 inches of preferably humus soil. So first off, the task is to create a loose topsoil of at least 6 inches. The first task, of course, is to get the landmass bounded by erecting a fence around the land such that access is available through a single access way. The bounding could in fact be upgraded to make the whole space a greenhouse farm as opposed to just a greenhouse. The fence, as the default minimum, should be of height about 6 feet and should also be sufficiently compact as not allow small animals to squeeze through the fence into the farm. Next, the farm should be partitioned into strips of land in the form of rectangular spaces of alternating sizes of width about 1 feet and 0.75 foot in alternating arrangement. In effect, standing from one side of the length dimension, the farm should be of alternating strips of width 1 foot and 0.75 foot, and then 1 foot, and so on. After the partitioning, the 1 foot wide strips are tilled into loose ground surface soil first, followed by half the 0.75 foot strips dug up and put on top of the 1 foot strip, with the end result of the farms having mounds of ridges on the 1 foot wide strips. Next, a cylindrical trough indentation is then constructed on the apex of the ridges such that the trough is in the middle of the mound. These troughs are constructed to serve as watering channel such that water can percolate through the loose soil down through the whole mound to enable the endemic microorganisms to flourish and upon death become fertilizers. Laying pipe network for water sprinklers is significant for the delivery of water. Because the plants need water, the next task is aimed at getting the ridges watered for the seeds to get water and germinate. For this to happen, a small pipe network design is appropriate. For this, a sort of water sprinkler design would be necessary. A preferred design consists of several water sprinkler tubes, a water distributor device, and a water storage tank. The size of the storage tank depends on the size of the farm. The sprinkler tube's design is preferably made of copper tube. The tube will have several points of perforations at set points along the length, and care is taken to make sure that at the extreme ends of the tube length there are perforations. This is necessary as not allow water to stagnate at the ends and invariably allow non-desirable microorganisms to fester. The tubes are such that both extremes are also threaded, such as to be affixed a closed cap. At the perforations are affixed check valve dispenser device that lets water spew out in near aerosol spray form. The water distribution design, on the other hand, is based on a small pipe of length between 6 inches and 9 inches, and of cross-sectional capped at both ends, and with the pipe is preferably oblong structure or ellipsoidal in cross-section. Further, at one cap are affixed as many tubes as there are ridges on the farm. The cross-sectional end of each affixed tube is also threaded to allow screw-on cap or connection. The other cap has a flange of smaller radius. With the system crafted as preferred and available, it is time to build the improvisational farm watering pipe network. Along the side of each ridge should be placed lengthwise one of the sprinkler tubes. Next, an inlet end for each tube is chosen and the opposite end is capped, but the inlet end is kept open. The tubes are anchored to the ground with U-shaped metallic brackets. The inlet tube ends are then affixed with connectors that join to the tubes of the water distributors one on one. The flange on the water distributor is then connected to a liquid pump machine, which is connected yet to the water storage tank outlet, such that the pump pumps water from the storage tank into the sprinkler tubes. Now, let's be clear that for people in the developed countries, there are lawn sprinklers that may perhaps be appropriate for use to achieve the same object of the watering pipe network. But that is optional, and adapting of the sprinkler system is not undertaken here as not to become an advertiser for any company. One further consideration of the watering of the farm is the degree of wetness that various plants and crops require. While this variation can be managed to some extent with selective use of the ridges for planting coupled with control of the water flow into the sprinkler tube, such devices as valves and other flow devices such as venturi tube, such may not always be as precise as might be desirable for high productivity. For high productivity, it might even be necessary to deploy watering controller system. A simplistic controller system would consist of a wetness sensor and an actuator. The wetness sensor triggers an on-off signal according to the wetness of the soil of the ridge it monitors and then turns on or off the watering line. Again, let's be clear, a much more sophisticated controller system can be designed or vendor sourced and deployed for greater automation and precision, but the object here is not on the type of the controller system, but rather on the recognition of the need for a controller system so that the farmer may consider such. Obviously, the pump to pump the water from the storage tank to the water sprinkler tubes and the actuator of the control system all require electricity. So the farm utilizes electric power, which of course makes imperative that a sort of farm scale specific electrical grid be designed and implemented to allow for possible use of all machines such as compressors and other devices. The first task is the setup of a structure that aligns with the layout of the farm as directed by the ridges. For instance, poles or bars may be set up at the end of each ridge, which are then connected with top connecting bars. For the wiring, an electrical panel box is affixed to one of the poles and the wiring is done internally. The wires for powering the farm's machines and the devices are of course bundled into tubes, preferably on the basis of one tube of wires per ridge and the ridge-specific tube latched to the top connecting metal bars, with the net result being the electrical wires stretching from the panel box along each ridge in protected small tubes that carry the electrical wires from end to end. Of course, at specific points along the tubes, outlets are produced and made into sockets for either plugging in the machines and devices to power them or for inserting light bulbs to light up the farm. The last feature of lighting up the farm is important as there is always the potential for thieving of the farms by criminals. The circumstance of being seen entering the farms should deter some thieves who might want to steal from the farm. Of course, a farmer may also opt to install actual security system, and such system could include motion detectors such that whenever any criminal breaches the perimeter of the farm, the motion detector will sound an alarm that is both audible to the criminal and to the farmer as well, and of course induce reaction from the farmer. For the would-be farmer who opted to use structurally stable abandoned homes farms in the city, which is a kind of urban farm, the adaptation process also starts with the floor space being partitioned into strips of width of alternating sizes of 1 foot and 0.75 foot spaces. Along the strips of width of 1 foot are placed metal trough of preferably 9 inches to 1 foot depth. These would become the equivalent of the ridges as created to provide the 6-inch top soil requirement for planting. Requisite fertile top soil is necessary and must be got by buying soil or from dump or by the dig up of ground-based land to 6 inches. The channel trough are subsequently filled up with the procured soil and shaped into a ridge in each trough. The cylindrical indentation trough in the soil is ultimately implemented. Laying the water network for this particular urban farm is also not significantly different relative to the ground-based farm. The sprinkler tubes, however, are attached to the lengthwise rims of the metal trough, and the tubes from the water distribution connected to the sprinkler tubes. The electrical farm grade for this class of, again, urban farm is not different at all, as the planting guided structure of the farm has no bearings on the design of the farm grade as earlier presented. So, for all intents and purposes, the tasks and performance sequence are followed precisely as before. At this point, then, the subsistence farm for use in farming for food has been developed and ready for delivery of the water into the storage tank and of the electrical power into the electrical panel box. On that note, I say to you, thank you so much for having come to listen to this observation about efforts aimed at elevating world hunger through subsistence farming by both urban dwellers and emergent countries' small farm farmers. You are truly appreciated. If you would like to get a privileged viewer or reader information or access podcasts of specialized contents or even vertically integrated concepts, then I implore you to join my supporter club and enjoy that privilege status. Thank you. While still here, do please take a moment and subscribe to the channel as to be informed of the publication of every new episode as soon as it is released. Bye till next episode.